God bless you, friends. Thank you for joining me on Morning Nuggets. This is yours truly, Pastor Nate. I pray this video finds you exceptionally well. Listen, when I saw that clip, I was on another live the other night. The host of the show is actually showing this, and of course, you know my mind. My mind went straight to scripture. And guess what I thought of? You're right, Jonah and the well. Friend, listen, I want to talk about being disobedient and operating in disobedience. This is exactly what happened to Jonah when God told Jonah to go down to Nineveh and preach to the people. Instead, Jonah took a ship going down to Tarshish. And on that ship, there were men, to make a long story short, they threw him overboard because they felt like he was causing the storm, right? So they threw him overboard, and then God prepared, the scripture said, God prepared a big fish, a great fish to swallow Jonah. Jonah stayed in the belly of the fish, some translations say the whale, for 3 days because he was disobedient. God told him to go to Nineveh and preach, and he went somewhere else. Friend, I want to ask you a question. Are you walking in disobedience? I'm not saying that you're actually in a physical well, but some of the things that we experience in life, we feel like we've been swallowed up. Jonah described it in the second chapter, in the second verse. He described it as being in the belly of hell. Friends, sometimes we feel like we're in a living hell. We feel like we're in the belly of a well, because life just doesn't seem to be working out. Every time we turn around, something is going on. Something is happening. Somebody's always doing something. Things are just never working out for you. You can't get the job you want. Let me ask you a question. Are you walking in disobedience? And I'm not saying that God will prepare a fish to swallow you up. Many times when we act in disobedience, these consequences come upon us because we cause them to come upon us. I mean, it's a principle. It's a general principle all over, and it applies across the board. Whenever we're doing something that we're not supposed to do, we suffer the consequences. Now, Jonah was a prophet. And what do prophets do? They hear God and they obey God. They speak exactly what God tells them to speak, and they do exactly what God tells them to do. No matter what society says, no matter what man says, no matter how much you talk about me, if I say I'm a prophet of God, I obey God rather than man. And if I don't obey God, there are some consequences. So Jonah being in the belly of a fish, Jonah being in hell, that was nobody's fault but Jonah. It wasn't even God's fault, even though God prepared the fish. But Jonah decided to take that route that God didn't tell him to. If Jonah hadn't done that, he wouldn't have found himself in that situation. Many of us, friends, we find ourselves in a pickle. We find ourselves in the belly of the well, so to speak, or in hell, because we're disobedient. When you go on your job, they tell you, hey, if you start working here, you sign on, this is the expectation. If you don't meet those requirements, there are consequences to pay, right? Written up, eventually termination. I mean, you go to a church setting, these are our rules. We don't like to throw people out of a church, but Paul had to instruct the leaders to do that because simply disobedience. You're in a school setting. When you were a child, when we disobeyed, what happened? We got in trouble. So there are consequences for disobedience. Check your life and see if you're obeying God. Maybe that could be the problem. Maybe you allow these consequences to come upon you because you're simply not being obedient. You know God told you to go to her. You know God told you to go to him and forgive him, or let that person know that you forgave, but you didn't do it. Get up and do it. You'll feel a lot better. You'll free yourself. You may find yourself being delivered from the mouth of that fish. Friend, I pray this exhortation bless you this morning. In the meantime, in between time, be at peace and not in pieces. Till next time, my friend.